We are live, Mr. Allen.
Okay, thank you. I've got 7:22. We'll call the meeting to order for the Jersey Shore Area School District Board of Directors for April 12th, 2021. We have a roll call, please, Mr. Enders.
Mr. Becker.
Here.
Mr. Brungard.
Here.
Ms. Stobler.
Here.
Mrs. Grant.
Here.
Mr. Kinley.
Here.
Mrs. Petrosky.
Here.
Mrs. Stemler.
Here.
Mrs. Thomas.
Here.
Mr. Allen.
Here.
All 9 members present.
Okay, thank you. If we can all cut your mics and we'll stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay, do we have any communications?
Nothing for this evening.
Thank you. President's report. Just report that we had an executive session this evening beginning at 6 o'clock and ending just prior to calling this meeting to order, and it was for personnel and legal. Nothing else to report. Intermediate unit.
Sorry, I don't have anything to report tonight. Our meeting will be next Wednesday.
Thank you. I don't see Robert here, so.
No, he's here.
Is he?
I'm here. Sorry.
I missed you, Robert. You're hiding. Student rep report.
Just a couple things this evening. First of all, this is School Spirit Week at the high school. Seems a little late in the year because of everything that's gone on, but we're happy that we were able to come up with something. And tomorrow is going to be Tropical Tuesday for all of the students and staff at the high school. So we're going to dress in appropriate tropical attire, and we have other things like that going on throughout the week. The other thing I'd like to briefly mention is that tomorrow night is the virtual conference for FBLA. You were able to live stream that from your homes using a device of some sort, computer, phone, tablet. And they're going to be announcing a couple of things, mainly the placers in the competitive events. Other than that, nothing else to report this evening.
Thank you, Robert. I know we'll do well as always at FBLA.
I think so. A little bit different this year, but
yeah, it is. Well, you know, we'll probably adjust to it as well or better than others if I know our students. Superintendent's report.
I want to start this evening by recognizing that today Representative Ham visited the high school and presented a congressional citation to high school teacher Jody English, recognizing her officially for her PARS Teacher of the Year award. So we thank Representative Ham for making the trip to Jersey Shore to hand out that award to a very deserving teacher. I'm starting tonight with a presentation.
Could I
from-
interrupt real quick?
Go ahead.
Dr. Ulmer? Could you, for the audience that may be listening out there, explain what PARS is?
PARS is Jersey Shore School District is a member of PARS. PARS is the Pennsylvania Association of Rural and Small Schools.
Thank you.
I'm
Sorry to interrupt.
Oh, it's okay. I'm going to recognize Jamie Doyle from PFM. She's also here with your bond counsel to talk about the bond refinancing.
Good evening. It's a pleasure to be here this evening. And if you like, I can screen share the
You have permission.
presentation. As soon as I find it on here, I have too many things open apparently. Here we go. Can everybody see my screen?
Yep.
Yes.
Wonderful. So this is the results that you authorized us to proceed with the refinancing opportunity back in March. We utilized the dual track process, as you may recall. And so we're ready to share those results with you this evening. And I was very pleased with the outcome. I will let you know up front. So our interest rate chart, this will look familiar from my handout last month. We continue to hover near all-time low interest rates, so that was great for this refinancing opportunity. The next page, you can see the summary of the bank loan proposals that we received, and the winning low-cost proposal came from Key Government Finance. They bid a fixed rate of 0.8%, fixed through maturity, 0 bank fees, and they do have some prepayment language, but I think this is fine. It's prepayable in whole, but not in part, with a penalty of 1% during the first year, and then no penalty after the first year. So I was fine with that language. We asked for it to be prepayable at any time with no penalty, but they're just trying to ensure that you're going to keep this loan for at least the first year. Under other conditions, they had in their proposal that the interest rate needed to be accepted by April 7th. So I spoke with your administration, and one thing that I knew from prior transactions that Key Government Finance finds acceptable is as long as I send them an email that says that I'm going to recommend that the board accept their proposal at tonight's meeting, then that satisfies that requirement. Obviously it's not anything binding because nothing I can do would be binding on the board, but that first requirement has been satisfied because I did indicate to them that I'd be recommending you accept their proposal this evening. And then the second one is just that you provide annual financial statements within 270 days and budgets within 60 days of adoption. And, that's fine as well. You already have requirements like that on your bond issues. So that's really nothing new or onerous. You can see the rest of the proposals as we scroll down the page. So the second place bid was still pretty far off of the first place bid. And you can see what those other proposals looked like. They all had fees associated with them. And for the most part, with the exception of this next to last one, didn't have any other onerous terms or conditions. So focusing on the Key Government Finance proposal, because that is better than the bond market. That was the second part of the dual track process, comparing the winning bank loan proposal to the bond market. Key is the better option. And this is the important page. So you may recall, to get to the important part, I showed you savings last month of about 104,000 net local effort savings. And we set a minimum acceptable savings target of 50,000. With the Key proposal, the net savings to the district comes in at $185,468. So that's about 80,000 more than what I showed you last month. Again, very pleased with these results. And you can see down below in column 6 how you would recognize those savings. So roughly 179,000 in the upcoming budget year. And then de minimis amounts, a little over $1,500, I'd say, on average for the remaining 4 years of the loan. Again, that totals the $185,468. The next couple of pages are just the mechanics. So to remind you how this will work, this will refund all of your remaining 2012 issue that you can see on the screen now. Those old interest rates ranged from 2.5% the whole way down. It will also refund your 2015 remaining bonds. Those rates range from 2% to 2.25%. Again, all of this is getting replaced with 0.8%. The next page is your 2015 bonds that will get refunded. Again, 2% on those. And finally, your 2015 Quad A, and you can see you had a 2.17% on that old issue. So all four of those issues will go away. And you can see on this page how much money it takes to pay off each of those four issues, principal and interest on each one. At settlement, which would be scheduled for May 17th if you accept the key proposal this evening. This is the new amortization schedule, or the backup page for the savings that we just looked at in summary. So there's the key bank 0.8% in column 3 now that will replace all those higher 2% and change interest rates. Page 10 is the sources and uses of funds. And you can see on this page the settlement date of May 17th that I alluded to, and the yield of the issue. That's the rate we'll report to the IRS, the 0.8%. This is what your debt portfolio will look like after this refunding occurs. So all your payments go away on those old issues as outlined. And we've added column 10 to reflect the series of 2021 with the Key Bank proposal. Incidentally, Key Bank was the winner of your 2020 issue as well when we went through this process a year or so ago. The next page is just a summary of some of the highlights that I went over, and the remainder of the pages are the Key Bank proposal itself that I'll leave that to you to peruse at your leisure. But in conclusion, we were very happy with the process, very happy with the end results. I'm trying to get back to the summary page here. And we would recommend that you accept the Key Bank proposal this evening. I would like to publicly thank your administration, Dr. Ulmer and Ben, for all of their work behind the scenes, helping us to answer questions and get everything in good working order for your consideration this evening. And I'm happy to entertain any questions that you have at this time before I turn things over to Jens Damgaard, your bond counsel, to address the resolution.
I just have one question. That 185,000 is net.
Correct.
That's all fees, commissions, whatever.
Correct.
Yes.
I had a question, and so how much, like, does PFM like get a percentage of the savings?
We get a flat fee that's detailed on the sources and uses page. Let me just go back to that here a second. I got out too early.
Sorry.
It's actually, I can just tell you what it is, but it's on page 10 of the handout, and it's $29,500. It's already netted out of there.
Thank you.
And I will clarify that was on your agenda when you received it on Thursday. It was already added, the resolution for tonight. You don't have to vote to add it.
Yeah, it's Finance A for everybody looking for it.
Is that my cue to discuss the resolution? This is Jens.
Go ahead.
I believe so.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Yes, the board, I believe, has in its packet, its agenda items, a resolution. I know the board has been through this process recently, so I'll be very brief. But the resolution you have before you is the only formal action required to approve the issuance of this new bond. We call it a bond because we were preserving options to either do it as a bank loan or as a potential public offering of bonds. It doesn't have a legal significance in terms of how the lender treats it. So this is a general obligation bond. It's one bond that will be issued by the district to refinance the 4 existing notes. So you're going to be saving some related costs by consolidation. So we'll be notifying the various bondholders and lender that they will be prepaid. And the resolution contains all the language that's required by a law known as the Local Government Unit Debt Act. And that's what we'll be complying with, and including a filing with the state and getting the state's approval for this new debt. And we'll reflect on the paperwork we file the fact that the other ones will no longer be outstanding. Otherwise, the security, the collateral, if you want to call it that, for this bond is identical to what the district had securing the prior notes and bond. So it's a pledge of the full faith, credit, and taxing power of the district, not a mortgage or something like that. It's basically promise to budget, appropriate, and pay the debt service as it's due. And it's the district's good credit that enabled you to have so much interest among the lenders to attract this kind of an interest rate. So again, it authorizes all the necessary paperwork to be done, the filings, authorizes officers to sign. The whole process takes about a month, and then we'll have the closing, we'll deliver the final documents, and then the various loans will be paid off. So I'll be happy to answer any questions as well.
I just have one, and I probably could have asked Jamie as well. Are we paying any insurance for the bonds?
No, there'll be no insurance on this refinancing because
know-
it's the bank loan option that won the process. So there's not typically bond insurance on a bank loan.
Okay, thank you.
And that's part of what makes this the right answer. We take everything into consideration, not just the rate, but the difference in the fees that are required, because it's different parties that are involved in a bond issue compared to a bank loan. So that's one of them. We don't need bond insurance on a bank loan.
And what was our credit rating?
We don't need a credit rating on a bank loan either. So your credit rating is the same as it has been. You've been doing an excellent job of maintaining it, but we actually don't need to get a credit rating on a bank loan. So you're not paying for that either. I mean, you still have one. You just don't need it for this refunding.
Okay, thank
So, Jamie, I just have one. I probably asked this before. What was the savings again? Was it 826,000?
No, it was $185,468, rounding up by a few cents.
Okay, you're right. I had that marked down here. Just misread it. All right, thank you.
Certainly.
Thank you both for coming tonight.
Our pleasure. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
I had-
Comguard
is now exiting.
I had also added to my report for this evening, we had a presentation from Hunt Engineering at the last meeting, and I wanted to give the board time to have a discussion about how they would like to proceed with that proposal. The Capital Projects Committee recommended we get a proposal, and I'm asking for conversation about what the board would like to do as a whole with the proposal that you received.
And I did have a couple board members contacted me and asked, they thought that the presentation was a little confusing. So probably taking some time to study it was a good plan. Does anybody still have any questions on the report itself?
So as the presentation goes, there's actually 3 different parts to the presentation, and we can choose one, all, or none of them.
Correct.
Okay.
And I know I did have some questions from the public that thought, you know, the presentation that they gave was showing our actual school district, you know, that's what was on there. And I said, no, that was just samples of different things that they can do that they maybe have done with other schools and things. So I said, that wasn't our schools, you know, because they were saying, what building is this doing? What building is that? You know,
I had the same question, Nancy.
yeah, I said,
Yep.
yeah.
And like I said, at the presentation, some parts of it were just kind of busy as well.
I think the more data we can get about what they're recommending, what they're saying about our district, the better decisions we can make guiding the district. It's hard to make those decisions without the appropriate data. Oh.
So do you see, Mr. Becker, that we need all 3 parts to this to make that decision, or one part of it's enough? Or I'm just curious as your interpretation of, because myself, I'm not sure where I'm at, to be quite honest. I don't know where I want to fall in this piece of the pie. Guess we can have a summary. Craig, do you have a summary? Like the first part of it was the broadest part of it, if I remember, but I don't remember.
Yeah, the first part was the broadest part, and it went into the details of virtually every room in the district of what was necessary, from, you know, leaky faucets to tiles missing, and that part was the part that we had completed already. The 3 additional survey or summaries would be: phase 1 would be additional services for space utilization and educational space planning. And that's $22,750. The second phase of that is additional services consolidation study or scope of work, and that was $7,600. And phase 3 is the proposal to complete additional services and public information program. And frankly, I have no idea what that means. So if anybody's an expert on these things, feel free. But that one luckily was the least expensive of all the 3 remaining options.
Well, I think we need the first 2. And I don't know what the third one is, but.
So here's a question. They don't give any kind of like breakdown of if we would approve all 3 of them together, that there's some kind of discount. Does that make sense? So like, can we approve 1 or 2 of these and then come back and do the third one if we feel like we need to? Does that make sense?
I believe we can.
Yeah, or even do the first one and see where that leads us, and then go to the next phase.
Based on the fact that there's no discount to do it all lumped together.
Right.
None was identified in the proposal.
I mean, did they actually give us a proposal or just a quote on what those pieces would cost?
The presentation that they gave at the last meeting was only what the first phase would look like if you did the first phase. That's what the Capital Projects Committee asked for, a proposal for just that part.
And that's phase one was the 22,750.
Correct.
Which talks about your space utilization from an educational perspective. Is that how I'm understanding that?
Correct.
Yes. So I'm asking, does the board want that to be added to a future agenda for a vote?
When they did the presentation and they talked about the space utilization they were talking about equalizing it in all buildings, and I'm not sure you can do that or that we even want that part that way. So is that the premise of the whole thing, or that's just an outcome of one of the pieces in that phase one?
I think part of that equalization, Mary, is there's a new policy that PDE and PSBA are approaching that calls for equity of the educational system at different locations. So what they could be proposing eventually is that if we have a gym at Jersey Shore Elementary, then we also have to have a gym or equivalent space at Avis and Salisbury. Is that where they're headed, do you think, Dr. Elmer?
That was how they, in my recollection of their presentation, that was an ask from that example school district. They asked for that information.
I mean, under the equity policies that we're going to have in place, because they're looking at not only equity as far as nationality and those types of things, but equity as far as educational resources of students throughout the district.
That policy is being recommended. We don't have the final version yet, but yes.
So how is that defined, or we don't know that? When you say equity of space, are we talking square foot per student? Are we talking a gym versus, a gym?
Well, as we said, we don't know exactly how far that's going to go.
Okay.
But they're like for our district where we only have certain areas of the district that have broadband internet. That's going to be part of that evaluation of equity as well. And I mean, look at what we had during the COVID was as far as digital equity from one student to the next. If you lived in Brown Township, and you had dial-up still at, was it 14,000 kilobytes, Dave?
Yeah, it was really bad. But I would also say that all that is changing rapidly right now. Starlink is in the area. Mm-hmm. Everyone will have access to broadband internet, whether they choose to get it or not. It's rather expensive to get initially, but my satellite dish is on order just so I can get it and play with it.
Well, let us know when you're done playing with it so we can all get one.
So is this coming down from the federal government, from the state government, or a combination of both? And do we need to have that before we go the next step? I don't know how soon are we looking at these things?
PSBA has had several presentations, and I know Dr. Ulmer, you're working with a committee now to develop the policy for us, right?
Yeah, and it is, Mr. Kenyon has a copy of what draft we got from another school district, so it won't be long before you'll see a version of that policy.
So will some of our decisions need to be based on that policy versus, that's what I'm asking, do we need to wait a little bit? It doesn't sound like long, or do we just jump into this? I don't want them giving us one thing and then because policy changes that it becomes fruitless and we just paid out $23,000 and we have to make changes because they're not working under what will be governed by our policy. Does that make any sense?
It does.
So if you're working on it now and you have a draft now, it sounds to me like within the next month or two that policy comes about, and then that leads us into the direction that they have to go and putting this utilization map or whatever it is together.
Well, maybe we could ask them that question and get a commitment if the mandate changes, that would be included in their study at no additional cost.
Well, and don't forget, they also have in their, I believe in their breakdown of that proposal, there are meetings to get, for lack of better words, your marching orders, like what you're looking at or looking for.
And can we give the marching orders without the policy? That's my question. That we know is coming.
Your solicitor says you should have the policy first if you want to base it on that. He's working on
Which
it.
sounds like within the month we'll have that, so. I just said, yes, I think we need to do these. I think we need to do this, but I also think we need to know where we have to go before we just go blindly out and make decisions that won't last.
Do it in the right order.
Okay.
And unless, as Wayne said, if they'll make a commitment to modifying their proposal around the state equity guidelines. So if you want to reach out to them maybe and ask them if they would do that.
Okay, I made a note.
Thank you.
Miss, go ahead.
Sorry, I was going to ask you just to reiterate what the policy actually is called again. Is it called something specific yet?
It will be the district equity policy.
It's just an equity policy. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Enders has an update on the budget.
So during tonight's budget conversation, we're going to be reviewing the revenue. I do not have a dollar amount update for the budget for the board. That will be coming at the next meeting. But I did put on the agenda attached is the 3 different classes of revenue, then a grand total of it. Just kind of before we start down through those, give you kind of an update of where mindset was in the creation of this revenue budget. It was built with the idea that we would be back to what we would call normal for next school year. For example, if you look at the athletic line item, you'll see we are budgeting for admissions. So we have a budget of $76,000, which is made up partially of admissions and partially of the activity fee. So that's one of the things that kind of mindset we were going down through this budget. I will start at the top now and go down through it. And just so the board knows, the 21-22 budget line is the 5th column in from the right, and then 2 columns more to the left is the 2021 projected. So I'm going to bounce back and forth and try to talk about both of those columns at the same time and try to keep you pointed in the same direction. So anytime
Can you share that on the screen for the public?
I can. Or Dr. Ulmer, can you just share the attachments from the agenda?
Okay, that makes more sense.
So you can see the top there is real estate taxes. I did look at the real estate tax options for the board today, and I will be emailing this out to you. Essentially, we have 6 options. The highest is we can go to the index, which is 4.1%. We could go to 75% of the index, would be 3.08%. We could go to 50% of the index, which would be 2.05%. We would could have a no increase to Lycoming County. Clinton County's tax rates are the ones that are being rebalanced this year, so we could go to Clinton County's rebalanced millage rate, or you could go to a no increase to Clinton County. The index is $609,670 increase in revenue. The 75% of the index is $467,670. The 50% of the index is $324,170. No increase to Lycoming County would be $72,270. At Clinton County's rebalance rate would be $38,645. And no increase to Clinton County would increase revenue to $28,570. As I said, I will be emailing you the document with all that information on there and with what the tax rates would be in each one of those scenarios.
So on this particular paper, what is it? What are you showing there? Oh, you left
No,
it
we
the
did
same as
not.
last year.
There is no increase to the real estate taxes at all.
Okay.
We will be discussing that at the first meeting of May, and then voting on what you plan on doing the last meeting of May. The projected real estate tax is for this year. We look like we're going to hit budget. We might be a little more, we might be a little less, but I believe we're going to probably hit it. Next line item I want to highlight moving down is earned income tax. The last present. Oh nope, you can stay up there. It's the fifth line down. Earned income tax. At the last budget update I given you, I showed you we adjusted earned income tax up from $3.7 million up to $3.85 million. And that's more in line with what we've been seeing over our past few years. This year we are projected to come in about 4.35, which would be a record banner year. We would have about 650,000 more in revenue than what we budgeted. Talked to this from some of my counterparts at other districts. I think other districts in Lycoming County are seeing the same thing. And one of the things that we should all kind of realize about Lycoming County and our district is that healthcare is probably our number one employment sector. So we believe that's probably one of the huge reasons why that huge spike is this year, is from a lot of overtime in our healthcare industry and very little layoffs in that industry. One thing I wanted to point to the board was when we were doing this budget last year, PASBO, which is our State Association of School Business Office officials, had recommended a 10% cut in earned income tax, and we obviously did not do that. So kind of thankful we didn't do a 10% cut, and we only cut it by about $100,000. Moving on down to delinquent real estate taxes, which is 2 lines down below that earned income tax. We are probably going back to normal again there, looking about $700,000 for next year. Projected for this year, we're about $725,000, which will be better than expected of $650,000. Line below that is interest earnings. Next year, we're budgeting $150,000. Primarily reason for this is we're under our new bank agreement where our new floor for our interest rate is 1% versus the 1.5% we're realizing this year. And I'm not predicting any high increases in interest earnings for the next year. So we will have opportunities to invest in that to get a better rate than our 1% that we're going to get from our bank as the floor. So therefore, I'm going to leave the budget alone versus 21's budget. This year we are projected to get better than what we were expecting in budget, the 1.75, and that's primarily because of the 1.5% floor we are realizing this year. Okay, Dr. Ulmer, you can go on to the next page.
Can I have a question first?
Go ahead.
The delinquent taxes, you're projecting 725,000. In other words, this is real estate taxes that people haven't paid, right?
Correct.
So I'm estimating if somebody's paying, let's say $3,000 for a real estate tax for school taxes, you're talking almost 200 and some people that are delinquent. Am I thinking correctly? Somewhere along that line? So that's a lot of people, isn't it?
Well, during
collectible,
when we did settlement, our collection rate hasn't changed a whole lot. Hold on one second, Mr. Bringer. I will pull my. This year we were about 92.58% collected of our real estate tax revenue, and it's been right around 92.5% for the past about 7-8 years. So we've been pretty consistent at about 92.5%.
so you're still talking almost 200 delinquent taxpayers.
Yeah,
Around that, that'd be pretty close, right?
yeah, I would think you're probably pretty close there.
That's a lot, isn't it? And
Well, let's put it into perspective. How many parcels of taxes do we collect from?
About 10,000.
So that puts it in a little different perspective. So 10,000 households, and we have 200 of them that are behind.
no, that's still a lot though, but I'm glad they're collectible. Okay, I'm on the right page.
Go ahead, Dr. Orr. Are there any other questions from any other board members?
I just have one on, going back up on this page to the earned income tax. You had said that it was because of our healthcare employment in the county.
That's what my gut tells me. Our region
Because
has not seen.
Center County laid off 250 people. So was there some reason that our county did better than they did?
My
I'm just
understanding of our,
if you don't know that, that's fine.
well, I'll just go you by what my understanding of the hospital in Williamsport that we have. And my understanding is when the merger happened, they were moving a lot of the administrative roles back over to Pittsburgh.
Right.
So when we kind of talked about this as a business manager group, I mean the primary roles in the hospital are the caregivers. And when we had them pull, we had the tax collector pull the top 10 employers in our county. And for all the districts, UPMC was like top 2 or 3.
So do you think those administrative people left before we're already
Correct.
going over the side to Pittsburgh before COVID hit them?
That was my understanding of the hospital system.
Because like I said, I know Center Community Hospital, between their medical practices and their hospital, they laid off over 250, I believe.
Yeah,
but they wouldn't have had that same phenomenon as far as pushing their administrators out to Pittsburgh because they're still an independent. Okay, that makes sense. Thanks.
Yep.
Ben, I have a question.
Sure.
Back to, thank you. Back to delinquent taxes. When we did the audit, we had the audit information. There was an estimated collectible amount of delinquent taxes over $1 million. So the amount that you're showing us in these most recent delinquent taxes, is that going to be added to the amount that we already So it's like $1 million, and if we added that to the audit amount that the auditor said that was delinquent, wouldn't it be like 17 or $1,700,000 or something? Like,
Hold on,
am I wrong?
trying to pull up the audit and
Yeah, I have it
see.
here. It's on page 36. I was just wondering how that worked.
Okay,
You see it?
I'm getting there.
Okay.
So what that outstanding audit is, that would be in grand total of all the years. So what this is saying is, there'd be two things this is saying is, one, it would be the collections of this year's delinquent taxes that were turned over. That number would have to be reflected in the audit, which is not. And then this is saying of that $1 million, approximately we should be able to collect about $700,000 of it next year.
So you're saying that we retain 700,000 of that debt internally rather than turning it over to collections?
No, we turn it all over to collections, but it's still earmarked for us.
Okay.
Well, basically what the audit she's talking about was the 1920 audit. And I don't have it in front of me, but so if it was $1 million that they projected or that was outstanding, or the projected 2021, looks like we're going to get 725 of that.
700.
You have 2021 projected is 725.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes.
Okay.
So this amount that you just gave us, these figures, 725, will be added to this amount. Am I not understanding that correct? That'll be added to the audit amount, correct?
No, it'd be taken away from the audit amount.
Taken away from, okay. This is the amount that you expect to collect then, right?
$725,000 this year. Yes.
Okay, well, that's really good. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I didn't understand that. Now I do.
Anybody else? Dr. Ulmer, can we move on to state revenue? So as we had talked at the last board meeting, our budget is yet to reflect anything that was proposed in the governor's budget. And if that was approved between the big three, basic ed, the CTE funding, and the special ed funding, we would have an increase of $472,700. But that is not reflected in this budget to date. I'm not going to, there's not a whole lot of information to go down through here on the state side because it really has not changed versus the previous years. The only other thing in here that has not been reflected yet is the debt service revenue, which is the bond the reimbursements on the bond does not reflect the presentation that PFM just gave you. So that will be a change coming up on April 26th when we present next time.
The two subsidies, Social Security and retirement,
Mm-hmm.
they went up. Well, Social Security went up just a little bit, but do they reflect the fact that The teacher salary changes?
Yes, they do.
Okay.
One key point component here, if you look from the second to last line item, the Safe Schools grants, you will see zero budget for next year, and you will see zero money projected for 2021, and you'll see $283,254 budgeted for 2021. That is the state's that was the state's portion of the CARES money. Okay. And I'm going to talk a little more about budgeting for CARES for next year when we get to the federal revenue. But on the projected side, one thing I wanted to tell you is when I'm working on these projections for this year, I am not taking into consideration the CARES revenue nor the CARES expenditures, because those two numbers should net out to zero, so it should have no effect on the bottom line. Any questions about the state revenue?
What's an example of a special state grant?
That's all. That's our pre-K counts grant.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. On the federal. Here again, the main focus here is on the CARES revenue. You'll see the budget of $399,044 for 2021. That was one of the CARES money we knew we were going to get in May of last year, and obviously that all changed as we move forward multiple times. There's nothing projected there for 2021. We are going to get some. That doesn't mean we're not getting it. We just are not going to count the expenditures, and we're not going to look at the revenue. For the Easter's 2 amount, the 21-22 amount, the $143,551. That is, if you recall, on the last budget update, end of March, that was the same dollar amount of the cost of the JSAL teacher and the JSAL secretary that we put in the budget for salaries and benefits. So we are budgeting the revenue that pays for those two positions. We will be getting a lot more Easter's 2, and we are going to get a lot more Easter's 3 money next year. But at this point in time, we're only putting in the budget the dollar amounts that we're identifying that are definitely being spent on those, for those purposes.
Now, I know that's over like 2 years or 2 years, right?
I think Dr. Ulmer's Easter's 3 go out to 2025 or is it 2024?
Easter's 2 is to 2023 and Easter's 3 is to 2024.
Is there a minimum each year, or it really doesn't matter? It's just overall?
It can be spent back to anything we had to spend on COVID from March of 2020 through those end dates.
Okay, so it doesn't have to say like you have to spend 50% this year and 50% next year. You can, okay, thank you.
The only stipulation is in Easter's 3, about $700,000 has to be spent on learning loss.
Right.
Outside of the stipulations of what it actually can be spent on.
So
Okay,
are we working on a
federal-
potential for summer school then with some of that?
We are working, as I presented in Easter's 2, we're working on after-school programs, not necessarily summer school, but there will be some summer school availability as well.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions for federal revenue? Go ahead, Dr. Ulmer. The final page is the summarization. The totals of local, state, and federal, and then the other sources is typically the sale of surplus assets, surplus goods that we've had. You will see you'll see, might have an update there for the projected amount because I want to look at something. I thought the number was higher than that. Because I know we had the sale of the fiber line this year, and we had some insurance proceeds that are sitting in there too, that are coming. Any questions regarding revenue?
Will you have something similar to this for on the expenditure side for the next? Yeah, okay.
Yes, I plan on giving you a projected expenditure. Probably it's going to be probably by object code, which would be salaries, benefits, so forth and so on.
Okay, thank you.
There's no other question. That ends my report.
Thank you, Mr. Enders. I do have in my report to point out that I put a textbook that was recommended by the high school administration and faculty for our business math course on display in the conference room. It can be seen by any board member at any point. It is budgeted in the high school budget for next year. I'm pulling out my documents to just make sure I give you all the information. We need 50 of those books. They're right now quoted cost at $120. That does come with online access as well to an electronic version. It is, and I said this for our business math class in the high school that we would use starting next year. It is there for your review if you would so choose to do that. I do want to congratulate tonight Tori Mikesel. Most of you know her as our central registration secretary. She is our March employee of the month. She does an amazing job for us. I think Mr. Allen put it well, as she is the face of the district for everybody that walks in to register a child. She is the first person that they all see, and she does a great job. So thanks to Tori Mikesel for all her hard work.
Dr. Armour, before you go on, can I have a question?
Sure.
The financial algebra, is that, I've taught algebra all my life, but that's something new to me, but is that a new course offering or is that replacing something in the business field? It's in the business field, right?
You already have a business math course on the books. This would be the textbook for that course. It would be a new textbook for the business math course.
Okay, I'd like to stop in. I'll stop in and see, look at the book. Curious. Thank you.
And I'm going to pause here and turn the floor over to Dr. Dady to talk about the SRO Memorandum of Understanding with TIDOT and Valor Regional Police.
All right. The MOU that's on there is on there as a first read. The police commission's already talked to Nate DeReamer. It's very similar to the Chief DeReamer. It's very similar to the MOU that you had with them before. There are a few changes in it. Those changes, I believe, are in red, as long as you got the same version that I sent. That way you can see the differences. But Nate looked it over as well. Chief DeReamer looked it over, and he believes it's exactly what the police commission is looking for as well. Part of the reason some of the language is in there in regards to if they merge with another department, as you know, they've merged before, and he just wanted to make sure that for the life of the contract, that if someone from one of the other police departments would become chief because of a merger or anything like that, which he doesn't anticipate, but if that would happen, that this contract would still be honored. So I hope you had a chance to look it over. Do you have any questions about it?
I have one.
I can't hear you. I didn't.
One down there at the bottom, you were talking.
You want to turn yours? Keep yours up.
Any questions for Dr. Dady.
Okay?
Yep, I can hear you now, Harry.
All right, the Article 1 down at the bottom, the very first page, you were talking about if it ceases to exist or something like that, it's going to be fulfilled by law enforcement. Suppose it does cease to exist, the police in general in this area. Does that mean that the state police itself will take over this area by passing through or something? Or how does, that's kind of vague to me a little bit, or is that no problem at all?
Well, if it would end up being the state police, here, I'll turn mine up. Yeah, you can turn yours down. I'll turn mine up. All right. If it would end up being the state police, then that would probably be a different story. But that would mean that any local law enforcement agency would have to cease to exist. This is more along the lines.
Languages merge.
Right. Yeah, the language there references a merger, not a not something that dissolved completely. The other thing that
Okay.
the other thing I wanted to let you know is he's also looking at the possibility of bringing on another officer, and as you guys know, Officer Fair is our SRO, and he would like to get this other person that he's looking to bring on to go through the SRO training to kind of work with Kyle and kind of be a backup when he's not there, fulfill hours when Kyle's off. And he's also hoping that it can also be a female officer so that we would have a male and a female in the schools working with our kids. So that's nothing that can be guaranteed at this point, but something that he's hoping to be able to accomplish. And it is 4 or 5 years to get locked in with that. And except for the past 2 years, because of the changes in the PCCD grant in regards to it needing to go towards COVID related things, typically about half of the SRO's salary has come out of the PCCD grant. So when it goes back to being that kind of standard amount that we get, that's one of the uses that grant has typically been used for. Right now, we've been funding it, but paying with that grant, it has been paying for other stuff instead that we would have had to pay for.
Ken, question.
Yeah.
That extra, I'm getting an echo. That extra office you're talking about bringing on, that's at no additional cost because it's the maximum annual amount of staff.
That person would just be fulfilling any hours, like if Kyle's off or takes vacation, or if he got pulled in for something else and wasn't able to fulfill all his hours that is designated for the school district, then this other person would fulfill those hours. So you're correct, it's at no extra cost.
So
And typically they don't even pay the amount that's on there, because as it is right now, like when Kyle's off, those hours just don't get fulfilled. So the amount that you see there, you can think of as like the max amount.
Max, that's what it says.
So
So that officer wouldn't be tagging along as a training exercise sometimes.
if they were, that wouldn't be to our expense, because again,
Right.
this contract limits them to those hours that are listed there.
All right.
Dr. Dady?
Yeah.
I'd like to go back to Article 1 that Harry was mentioning earlier.
Yeah.
And where it says merge with other police departments, or ceases to exist. That this contract. Can we clarify that it ceases to exist as Tyodotin Valley Regional Police Commission?
Yeah.
Just to clear up any ambiguity that if they kind of go belly up and
what I can do is
cease
to exist as a local law enforcement agency.
As a municipal agency or something.
That sounds, yes.
Because we wouldn't be able to force the state police to fulfill that is the issue. Well, we could tell them to, but I don't think we'll win that argument.
Well, we'll just call them every half hour and tell them we need a ride by.
Careful.
You have any other questions for me before I mute myself so Brian can come back on? All righty.
And last thing I want to point out tonight is the board does recognize, and we had this conversation in executive session, that we do know the restrictions have changed, that the Department of Health restrictions, we could all, as a board, meet in the boardroom, but that would not allow public participation based on the capacity restrictions. It would cause issues with us following the guidelines, being able to hear and be televised. So until public is be able to be present, we are going to continue to use this mode of board meetings. And that's my report for this evening, Mr. President.
Thank you. This time, before we go to courtesy of the floor, I'd like to ask that we add an item to personnel, would be D, item E. And this, it would be stated as follows. To approve the final agreement between Jersey Shore Area School District and Jersey Shore Area Education Association, consistent with the previously approved fact finders report and recommendations. Jersey Shore Area Education Association, PLRB case number Act 8820-4-E, and dated March 3rd, 2021. Such an agreement has been documented into a full context and legally executable format in cooperation between representatives of both JSAEA and JSASD. So could I have a motion to add that to tonight's agenda as personnel item E?
So
Motion.
moved, Mary.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call, please, Mr. Enders.
Mr. Becker,
Yes.
Mr. Brungard,
Yes.
Ms. Dobler,
Yes.
Mrs. Grant,
Yes.
Mr. Kinley,
Yes.
Mrs. Petrowski,
Yes.
Mrs. Stemler,
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas,
Yes.
Mr. Allen,
Yes.
9-0.
So that then would be in our personnel agenda. At this point, we'll open up the phones. It's 8:29 for courtesy of the floor.
And the phone number for courtesy of the floor is 570-398-5576. We do have someone that wants us to call them, and I'm going to have our tech staff call that person first. But the phone line is 570-398-5576.
Did we get a name?
Thank you.
Did our tech guys get a name of the person that we called? We know that for the,
Again, the phone number is 570-398-5576.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And yes, we do have a name.
Dr. Ulmer, did we get a name from that call?
Yeah, I don't know if the mic was picking up.
I assume if we call them, we must know their name, but
Our tech staff did give the name before he spoke. His name, it was Jacob Furlan.
okay, thank
Jared
you.
Furlan, sorry. I don't have my note anymore. I gave it to the tech person.
We probably had a time delay or something that we didn't hear it.
Kayla Calhoun, Avis.
Go ahead.
You can go ahead.
Hi, I am calling in regards to Ben's presentation tonight of revenue. I am curious about the revenue from closing Nippono's pool and where that could be seen in his revenue report.
Is there someone on the line?
Can you repeat that? I'm sorry. I think it was muted in the Teams call there.
Sure. I am asking about the reoccurring savings from closing Nippono's school and if that revenue would show up in the revenue report that he had presented this evening.
Do we have a name on that call?
Could you hear that the second time?
Part of it, but no name.
Okay. I heard Kayla Calhoun on my end. And her question was, where in the revenue report would she be able to see the savings in the closure of Nipponos Elementary?
Thank you.
Does anybody want to give that a short answer? If not, I could.
You talking about a board member or somebody from the administration?
Either or. If Ben wants to do it quickly, he can, or I will.
On the revenue side, the Nipponos would show up in the real estate tax revenue piece from the tax revenue we are receiving from that building being now occupied as a senior living center.
But the savings are essentially rolled back into the general fund of the district, correct, Mr. Enders?
That is correct. I mean,
it's money not spent is really not documented separately somewhere else.
That is correct. On the expenditure side, that is correct. It's no different than about 2-3 years ago, last year we had a bunch of retirees and we didn't fill all those positions. The loss of that position doesn't show up documented somewhere in this year's budget. It's just not there.
Okay, thank you.
Did you all hear that?
No.
Kayla has an additional question. Go ahead.
Is there any way that we can turn on comments to this platform? I feel like there's a lot of communication between the board and the public as the meeting is occurring unless the public person may call it. Do you understand what I'm saying?
So I'm not sure that you heard her directly, but I'll summarize. Her question was, if we continue to meet virtually like this, she would like us to consider having the public giving the public the ability to make on-demand comments directly into the meeting rather than having to call in.
That's not going to happen. We're going to maintain our current agenda as it is.
In case you didn't hear that, she also commented that she would like to see the second courtesy of the floor added. I also wanted to check, since you couldn't hear her, did you hear the first caller?
Yes.
Okay.
It was a little bit of an echo, but it was at least a little bit more understandable.
Are you referring to Mr. Furlan?
Yes.
I only caught the second part of what he said. I'm not sure that I understood. Can you summarize for those that would have heard it and I didn't?
Okay. Mr. Furlan's comment was specific to the fact that right now there are 2 first grade classes at Saladiesburg Elementary, and there's only 1 second grade class planned for next year. And he commented on the learning loss that his children have seen and his concern about that larger group going into second grade.
Thank you.
Actually, Dr. Almer, I actually did not hear Kayla Calhoun's. I'm not sure if it was just me on my and but I did not hear her second question nor her third, but I did hear you explain her third. So I didn't hear the second. I apologize.
Her second comment was wanting the board to consider having on-demand comments from the public being, I believe, able to be typed in or commented directly into the stream of the meeting.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Motion to close courtesy of the floor, Mary.
Thank you, Mrs. Thomas. We have a second.
I'll second.
Wayne.
Okay, we have a roll call, Mr. Enders.
Mr. Becker,
Yes.
Mr. Brungard,
Yes.
Ms. Dobler,
Yes.
Mrs. Grant,
Yes.
Mr. Kinley,
Yes.
Mrs. Petrowski,
Yes.
Mrs. Stemler,
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas,
Yes.
Mr. Allen,
Yes.
9-0.
Okay, so courtesy floor closed at 8:44. Okay, we'll move on to personnel. We have items A through D. It has been requested that we address each of the coaching positions separately. So would anybody like to make a motion to approve the entire agenda, and then we'll take separate votes on the coaching positions?
And Craig, just
Mr.
as the correction, it's A through E. We added E, remember?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. Thank you, Mrs. Thomas.
So moved, Mary.
And just for explanation, E is the approval of the new agreement from the Teachers Association.
Mr. Allen, are you separating E for a separate vote, please?
We can do that. Yep.
Your solicitor has asked for that.
Do we have to have a separate motion as well, or just a separate vote?
Nope, just separate roll call vote, not in a separate motion.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Did someone second this?
We have a motion from Mrs. Thomas. We have a second.
Second, Wayne.
Thank you, Mr. Kinley. So we'll start with the retention of coaches, beginning with wrestling. We have a roll call vote, Mr. Enders.
Mr. Becker,
Yes.
Mr. Brungard,
No.
Ms. Dobler,
Yes.
Mrs. Grant,
Yes.
Mr. Kinley,
Yes.
Mrs. Petrowski,
Yes.
Mrs. Stemler,
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas,
Yes.
Mr. Allen,
No.
7-2.
Okay. Boys basketball. We have a roll call, please.
Mr. Becker,
Yes.
Mr. Brungard,
No.
Ms. Stobler,
Yes.
Mrs. Grant,
Yes.
Mr. Kinley,
Yes.
Mrs. Petrowski,
Yes.
Mrs. Stemler,
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas,
Yes.
Mr. Allen,
Yes.
8-1.
Next is girls basketball.
Mr. Becker,
Yes.
Mr. Brungard,
Yes.
Ms. Stobler,
Yes.
Mrs. Grant,
Yes.
Mr. Kinley,
Yes.
Mrs. Petrowski,
Yes.
Mrs. Stemler,
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas,
Yes.
Mr. Allen,
Yes.
9-0.
Swimming.
Mr. Becker,
Yes.
Mr. Brungard,
Yes.
Ms. Stobler,
Yes.
Mrs. Grant,
Yes.
Mr. Kinley,
Yes.
Mrs. Petrowski,
Yes.
Mrs. Stemler,
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas,
Yes.
Mr. Allen,
Yes.
9-0.
And cheerleading.
Mr. Becker,
Yes.
Mr. Brungard,
Yes.
Ms. Stobler,
Yes.
Mrs. Grant,
Yes.
Mr. Kinley,
Yes.
Ms. Petrowski,
Yes.
Mrs. Stemler,
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas,
Yes.
Mr. Allen,
Yes.
9-0.
Okay, and then we'll do B, C, and D together.
Mr. Becker,
Yes.
Mr. Brungard,
Yes.
Ms. Stobler,
Yes.
Mrs. Grant,
Yes.
Mr. Kinley,
Yes.
Mrs. Petrowski,
Yes.
Mrs. Stemler,
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas, Mrs. Thomas, you are muted.
Yes.
Mr. Allen,
Yes.
9-0.
Okay, and now we'll do item E as a roll call. Would
No.
anyone like me to read that motion again?
What, I had like a correction to that, so would I do that after?
We have to have motion in a second, so we have those. So can we have any discussion? Yes.
Okay. So I should do that now. I would like, on number 10.9, I believe it is, that
Yeah.
the last sentence just says she, and it's for child rearing and also includes adoption of a child. That should also include he for dad. So I would just recommend that they add that in there.
Thank you. And we'll, Dr. Ulmer, could you make that recommendation to the solicitor so he can pass it on to the association? It's just a kind of a carryover omission, really. Thank you, Mrs. Petrowski.
Yes.
Anything else? Okay, hearing no other, any questions? Do we have a roll call on E, please?
Mr. Becker,
Yes.
Mr. Brungard,
Yes.
Ms. Stobler,
Yes.
Mrs. Grant,
Yes.
Mr. Kinley,
Yes.
Mrs. Petrowski,
Yes.
Mrs. Stemler,
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas,
Yes.
Mr. Allen,
Yes.
9-0.
Thank you. And we have nothing under curriculum instruction. Nothing in building and grounds. Finance. A, and that's to adopt the resolution from PFM Financial Advisors. We have a motion to approve finance.
So moved, Mary.
I'll second.
Any questions or comments? Okay, roll call, Mr. Enders.
Mr. Becker,
Yes.
Mr. Brungard,
Yes.
Ms. Stolber,
Yes.
Mrs. Grant,
Yes.
Mr. Kinley,
Yes.
Mrs. Petrowski,
Yes.
Mrs. Stemler,
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas,
Yes.
Mr. Allen,
Yes.
9-0.
Okay, on to miscellaneous, and it's been requested that we pull item C for further consideration. So we'll be doing that. So we have items A, B, D, and E remaining. So we have a
So-
motion for those items.
So moved, Mary.
Second,
Second, Wayne.
who did we get for a second?
Mr. Kinley?
Thank you. Any questions, comments, or concerns on any of those items?
I actually have a quick comment. Policies still have one more, correct?
Excuse me?
I have a quick question for you. The policies are specifically to E, excuse me, to D. This is just a first read that they
Yeah,
can
D
be
is-
changed.
Right, D is first read and E is second read. So only E would be final.
Okay.
If you have any suggestions for anything you see in letter D, please let me know and I can update them before the board sees them in 2 weeks.
Okay.
Okay, no questions. Could we have a roll call on miscellaneous minus item C?
Mr. Becker,
Yes.
Mr. Brungard,
Yes.
Ms. Stolber,
Yes.
Mrs. Grant,
Yes.
Mr. Kinley,
Yes.
Mrs. Petrowski,
Yes.
Mrs. Stemler,
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas,
Yes.
Mr. Allen,
Yes.
9-0.
Okay, anything for old business?
I have something, Mr. Allen, just a comment. I think as all of us know, and hopefully the public here, but our softball field was redone here, and I would like to express my personal thanks to Dr. Ulmer for acting so quickly on this. I mean, with all the phone calls and stuff that were made between him and Mr. Wall and different people. And I'd like to thank Mr. Wall for giving up his day off that he had planned, coming in to supervise this job. And lastly, the maintenance people that were there, they did one super job. And Mr. Wall stated to me it's probably better than it was when it was originally put in, and it does really look great. So I'd like to thank all those people, especially Dr. Ulmer, for moving this along quickly. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Brungard, but I want to reiterate that our maintenance staff and Mr. Wall did an amazing job. It looks great.
They really did. If you get a chance, stop by and look at it. If you don't know what it looked like before, it's just, it is just amazing job that they did there.
Yeah, and I second that as well. I had a call from one of the coaches, and I attended the game on Friday afternoon as well. And the coach was ecstatic that it got done that quickly and that well. So, great job by the maintenance folks.
It looks wonderful, just wonderful. Big thank you to everybody involved in that.
Okay, do we have anything for a second executive session?
I do not.
All right, then we'll entertain adjournment.
So moved.
Thank you.
Have a great evening.
Good night, everybody.
You too.
Good night.
Are you ready?
Have a good night.